The knock on the door was not a knock. It was a frantic drumming, a sound that clawed its way through the quiet hum of my apartment and straight into my nervous system. It was past midnight, a time when the only visitors were ghosts of the day's worries. I froze, my half-read book slipping from my fingers. It came again, louder this time, punctuated by a sound that could have been a sob or a gasp for air. That was when I knew. Only one person in the world knocked like they were falling apart. Sarah. I threw the deadbolt and pulled the door open, my heart a cold stone in my chest. She was huddled on my doormat, her small frame looking even smaller, swallowed by the cavernous hallway. But it was the blood that made the world tilt. It was a dark, ugly smear across her cheek, a blossoming stain on the sleeve of her pale blue coat, and a terrifying wet patch matting her blonde hair near her temple. Her eyes, wide and swimming with a terror so profound it seemed ancient, found mine. For a moment, we just stared, two sides of a chasm that had opened without warning. "Eleanor," she breathed, and her voice was a shredded thing, a whisper of gravel and pain. I didn't ask what happened. Not yet. The question was a useless tool in the face of such raw damage. My body moved before my mind could, my hands reaching out to grip her arms, pulling her inside from the cold judgment of the hallway. She stumbled, her legs giving way, and I caught her, my own strength barely enough to bear her weight. The smell of rain, copper, and fear filled my small apartment. I guided her to the living room, a slow, agonizing shuffle, and lowered her onto a cream-colored armchair that was suddenly, horrifically, stained with her reality. She was shivering, a violent, uncontrollable tremor that shook her entire body. I knelt in front of her, my hands hovering over her face, afraid to touch, afraid of the pain I might cause. "Sarah, look at me." Her gaze was distant, fixed on some middle point between my face and the horror she had just escaped. She started, her lip trembling, split and already swelling. She flinched, a fresh wave of tears spilling down her blood-streaked cheeks. "He said..." She took a shuddering breath, a sound that cracked my heart in two. "He said I deserved it." The words landed in the silent room with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't the blood or the bruises that broke me. It was that. The casual cruelty. The venomous justification that had been whispered into her ear as she was broken. The man she had loved, the man she had chosen, had not only hurt her, but had also tried to steal her right to feel wronged. In that instant, a feeling I hadn't known I possessed rose in me, a cold and absolute fury that eclipsed all shock and fear. It was a protective instinct so fierce it was almost unrecognizable. I stood up, my movements calm and deliberate, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. I went to the kitchen, my mind a blank slate where only one thought was being written over and over. Get her out. Get her safe. I wet a soft cloth with warm water, my hands steady. I found the first aid kit under the sink. As I walked back to her, she hadn't moved. She was a statue of misery, a monument to a love that had become a weapon. I began to clean the gash on her forehead, my touch as gentle as I could manage. She hissed in pain but didn't pull away. We were silent. The only sounds were the soft dab of the cloth against her skin and her ragged, shallow breaths. The cut was deep. It would need stitches. Her whole body was a map of his rage, a darkening bruise on her jaw, the ghost of fingerprints on her arm. He had tried to erase her, and in his failure had only made her more tragically present. As I worked, the plan formed, not as a thought, but as a certainty. It was reckless. It was illegal. It was the only thing to do. My life was here. My job, my apartment, my carefully constructed peace. But her life was bleeding out on my armchair, and between the two, there was no choice. I finished cleaning the cut and taped a piece of gauze over it. It was a clumsy, temporary fix, but it was all I had. I looked at my sister, my little sister, who I had taught to ride a bike and helped with her homework, now a victim of a war I hadn't even known she was fighting. My decision was made. My feet carried me into my bedroom, the soft carpet a stark contrast to the sharp edges of my thoughts. The room was my sanctuary, a place of quiet order and predictable peace. On the wall hung a painting of a calm sea, a placid blue horizon I had bought because it felt like a promise. Tonight, it felt like a lie. There was no calm, only the storm that had crashed into my home, wearing my sister's face. I opened the top drawer of my dresser, pushing aside neatly folded scarves. Beneath them was a small, locked metal box. I retrieved the key from its hiding place inside a hollowed-out book on my nightstand, a spy novel trick that felt childishly dramatic until this very moment. Inside the box were the anchors of my life: my birth certificate, my social security card, and my passport. I picked up the small, dark blue booklet. My own face stared back at me from the ID page, a bland, slightly smiling stranger frozen under the unforgiving flash of a government camera. Eleanor Vance, age 32, hair, brown, eyes, brown. We didn't look identical, Sarah and I. She had our mother's lighter hair and our father's blue eyes, while I had inherited the reverse. But we shared a bone structure, the same curve of the jaw, the same shape to our nose. In the harried, impersonal shuffle of an airport line, under the tired gaze of a border agent, could she pass for me? For a woman desperate to be invisible, a woman with her hair pulled back and her face shadowed by a hat, could she become Eleanor Vance long enough to disappear? It was a terrible, desperate gamble, but it was better than no gamble at all. Next, I pulled out the envelope tucked at the bottom of the box. It held my emergency cash, a thick stack of bills I had been saving for a crisis, a lost job, a medical emergency. I had never imagined this. I counted it quickly. $6,000. It was everything I had. It would have to be enough. With the passport in one hand and the cash in the other, I walked back into the living room. Sarah hadn't moved. The only change was that the shivering had subsided, replaced by a frightening stillness. She looked like a porcelain doll that had been dropped, the cracks held together by nothing more than sheer will. Her gaze was still distant, her eyes tracking memories I couldn't see. I knelt before her again, placing the warm, damp cloth on the coffee table. I waited until her eyes finally, slowly, found mine again. "I'm not going to call the police, Sarah," I said, my voice low and even, a strange calm settling over me. She blinked, confused. "But he tried to—" "I know what he did," I interrupted, my tone sharp enough to cut through her haze. "And the police will come. They will take a report. They might even arrest him. He'll post bail in a few hours, and then what? He will be angrier. He will be more careful. And he will come for you because he believes he has the right. He believes you deserved it." The phrase hung in the air between us again, heavy and toxic. I saw the truth of my words register in her eyes. The terror wasn't just of the pain he had caused, but of the certainty that he would cause it again. He had marked her as his property, and the world had ways of agreeing with men like him. "You can't stay here," I continued, pressing the advantage. "You can't stay in this city. You can't even stay in this country, not as Sarah Jenkins. He will look for you, and he will find you." "So what do I do?" she whispered, the question a fragile admission of defeat. "Where do I go?" This was the moment. The precipice. I held out my hand, opening my palm to reveal the dark blue passport and the thick roll of cash. Her eyes widened, first at the money, then at the passport. She looked from the booklet to my face, her brow furrowed in a confusion so deep it was almost painful to watch. "This is you," she stated, her voice barely audible. "Yes," I said. "It is. And for tonight, and for as long as you need it to be, it's you too. You can book a flight, the first one leaving for anywhere far away. Lisbon, Dublin, Buenos Aires, it doesn't matter. Just go. You take this money and you get on a plane and you don't look back." I leaned closer, my gaze locked on hers, trying to pour all the strength, all the conviction, all the desperate love I felt for her into that one, final command. I took her cold, trembling hand and pressed the passport and the money into it, closing her fingers around them. "Run." For a long moment, Sarah simply stared at the objects in her hand as if they were alien artifacts, their purpose beyond her comprehension. The smooth, official cover of the passport, the crisp, unfamiliar weight of the cash. She looked up at me, her blue eyes, so full of terror moments before, now clouded with a profound and heartbreaking confusion. "I can't," she whispered. It wasn't a refusal, but a statement of fact, like a child explaining they can't reach a high shelf. "Eleanor, I can't. This is your life, your name. I can't just take it." "It's not a life, it's a name on a piece of paper," I countered, my voice low and urgent. "And right now, that piece of paper is the only thing that can save yours." Did you think I was joking? But where would I go? What would I do? I don't know anyone. I can't speak Spanish or whatever they speak in Lisbon. Her logic was returning, but it was the logic of a victim, a logic defined by limitations and fear. She was looking for reasons why she had to stay trapped, because the alternative was too vast, too unknown. "You'll learn," I said, the words sharp. "You'll learn because you have to. You'll find a small room to rent. You'll get a job that pays you under the table. You'll be scared. You'll be lonely. But you will be alive, and you will be free from him. Isn't that worth being scared for a little while? She shook her head, a tear tracing a clean path through the drying blood on her cheek. You don't understand, Elle. He'll find me. He said if I ever left, he'd find me, no matter where I went. He said he has friends everywhere. He has a sales job and a drinking problem, Sarah. He doesn't have a network of international spies. I shot back, my patience wearing thin. I wasn't being cruel. I was trying to puncture the mythology of his power that he had so carefully built in her mind. He says these things to keep you small, to keep you afraid. His power ends where your fear does. Right here, tonight. I reached out and grabbed my laptop from the side table, flipping it open on the floor in front of her. The screen illuminated her bruised face in a cold, white light. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to do it. My fingers flew across the keyboard, the clicking sounds echoing in the tense silence. Airline websites bloomed on the screen, a kaleidoscope of destinations and departure times. First flight out. To anywhere that isn't here, I muttered, my focus absolute. London. No, too close. Too many connections back here. Madrid, 6 a.m., one layover in Frankfurt. Sarah watched me, her expression a mixture of awe and horror. She was watching her quiet, predictable older sister dismantle her own life with a terrifying efficiency. Eleanor, your job, your friends. What will you tell them? What happens when you need your passport? I'll tell my boss I have a family emergency. I'll tell our parents you've decided to go traveling to find yourself, and that you'll call when you're settled. And I will report my passport as stolen, I said, not looking up from the screen. I will get a new one. It will be a bureaucratic headache. It will be inconvenient. Do you think I care about inconvenience right now? I found a flight. A direct flight to Toronto leaving at 5:45 a.m. from the international airport. It wasn't as far as I wanted, but it was in a different country, and it was soon. Time was the most important currency we had. I clicked on it without hesitation. Give me the passport, I commanded. She handed it to me, her hand still trembling. I began to type in the information, my own name, my own birth date, booking a one-way ticket into the unknown for my sister. The credit card details were memorized, a familiar dance of numbers. Click, purchase. The confirmation email arrived seconds later with a subject line that felt like a death sentence and a proclamation of freedom all at once. Your flight itinerary. I turned the laptop so she could see it. You leave in 4 hours, I said. The ticket is booked. Your name is Eleanor Vance. You are 32 years old. You are going to Canada for a much-needed vacation. The reality of it finally seemed to land. Her breathing hitched, and for a second, I thought she was going to be sick. She looked around my small, cozy apartment, at the life she was about to steal, and then at her own hands, stained with her own blood. A different kind of resolve began to form in her eyes, replacing the fear. It was the hard, brittle resolve of someone with nothing left to lose. Okay, she whispered. The word was small, but it was solid. It was the only foundation we had to build on. Okay, good, I nodded, my own relief so potent it almost made my knees buckle. Now let's get you cleaned up. You need to look less like a victim and more like a tourist. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in controlled panic. The first stop was the bathroom. I ran a hot shower, the steam filling the small room, and handed Sarah a stack of fresh towels. Wash it all away, I said, my voice softer than before. The blood, his touch, everything. When you step out of that water, you are no longer the person who knocked on my door. She just nodded, her eyes hollow, and closed the door behind her. I stood outside, listening to the rush of the water, and every minute she was in there felt like an hour I was losing. While she showered, I moved with a feverish purpose. I pulled one of my own small suitcases from the top of the closet, an anonymous black carry-on. What does a person pack when they are running for their life? I threw in a mix of practical items, jeans, sweaters, a warm jacket, comfortable shoes. I added all the toiletries from my guest bathroom, a new toothbrush still in its packaging. I tried to think of everything. A universal power adapter, the spare pair of reading glasses I kept. Every item felt both intensely important and completely inadequate. How could a suitcase full of clothes fix a life that had been shattered? When Sarah emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in one of my large white towels, she looked different. The blood was gone, and with it some of the raw victimhood. Her face was pale and scrubbed clean, the split lip and the darkening bruise on her jaw now stark and undeniable against her skin. The cut on her forehead, which I had carefully rebandaged with a waterproof dressing, was a small, neat square. She looked less like a casualty and more like a fighter after a brutal first round. My hair. she said, her voice quiet. It's different from yours. We'll pull it back, I instructed, already pulling a brush through my own brown hair, then twisting it into a severe bun at the nape of my neck. You do the same. It's a common style. No one will look twice. Wear the gray sweatshirt and the black jeans. Don't wear any makeup. We're going for forgettable. As she dressed in my clothes, which were a size too big for her, I drilled her. We sat at my small kitchen table, the flight confirmation glowing on the laptop screen like a beacon. What is your name? Eleanor Vance. How old are you? 32. Where are you going? Toronto. Why are you going? A vacation. I needed to get away. The irony of that last line was a bitter taste in my mouth. Who are you meeting? No one. It's a solo trip. We went over it again and again, a catechism of lies that had to become her truth. Her answers grew stronger, more confident with each repetition. She was shedding the skin of Sarah Jenkins, a frightened girl who deserved what she got, and slowly, hesitantly, inhabiting the persona of Eleanor Vance, a woman who was in control of her own destiny. With an hour to spare, I called a car service using the app on my phone. The driver would be there in 10 minutes. The finality of it hit me then, a sudden, breath-stealing wave of grief. This was it. The last few minutes I would have with my sister, perhaps for years, perhaps forever. I took her hands in mine. They were still cold. Listen to me, Sarah. When you get there, find a cheap motel for a few days. Use the cash. Don't use the credit cards I packed for you, not for a while. They can be tracked. Get a burner phone as soon as you can. Call me from a public number when you're safe. Don't tell me where you are, not specifically. Just tell me you're okay. Tears welled in her eyes again. But these were different. They weren't tears of fear, but of gratitude and sorrow. Eleanor, what have you done? You've ruined your life for me. He ruined your life, I corrected her, my grip tightening. I'm just helping you get it back. A new passport is a hassle. A new sister is impossible. Now tell me you understand. I understand, she said, her voice firm, and I believed her. The buzz from my phone announced the car's arrival. We stood up, a silent, shared movement. I handed her the suitcase. At the door, she turned and hugged me, a fierce, desperate embrace that conveyed everything we couldn't say. It was a thank you, a goodbye, and a promise, all wrapped in one. I love you, Elle, she choked out against my shoulder. I love you more, I whispered back, pushing her gently towards the door. Now go. Don't look back. Just run. I watched from my window as she climbed into the back of the black sedan. She did not look back. The car pulled away from the curb, its red taillights shrinking into the darkness, until it turned a corner and was gone. I stood there, alone in my silent apartment, the ghost of my sister's presence already beginning to fade. The first, terrifying question of my new reality began to form in my mind. What have I just done? The morning light that filtered through my blinds felt accusatory. It illuminated the crime scene of my living room, the armchair with its dark, ugly stain, a silent testament to the night's horror, the discarded damp towel on the floor, the lingering scent of fear that soap and water couldn't wash away. I had not slept. I had sat on the floor, watching the sky shift from inky black to a bruised purple, then to a hopeful gray, all while a single, looping question played in my mind. What have I done? My life, once a model of predictability, was now a tangled mess of felonies, aiding and abetting, harboring a fugitive, though Sarah was a fugitive from a man, not the law, lying to federal authorities, which I was about to do. The thought sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through my exhausted body. At precisely 9 a.m., with a hand that trembled only slightly, I dialed the non-emergency police number. I reported a break-in. I told the bored-sounding officer on the other end that my car had been rifled through last night. My purse was gone. Wallet, credit cards, passport, everything. The lie felt slick and ugly in my mouth. He gave me a case number and told me to cancel my cards. The entire conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. It was terrifyingly simple. The first thread of my old life, snipped clean. The days that followed were the longest of my life. The silence in my apartment was a living entity. Every creak of the floorboards, every siren in the distance, sent my heart into a frantic rhythm. I went to work, a ghost at my own desk, nodding through meetings and staring blankly at spreadsheets. I called our parents and fed them the story about Sarah's spontaneous trip, a fabrication that tasted like ash. My mother was confused, but she didn't mention anything to me, she said, her voice laced with a hurt I had caused. It's not like her. I know, I replied, my voice a perfect imitation of calm. I think she just needed a clean break. to figure things out on her own. A week after that night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, a string of digits with a foreign country code I didn't recognize. My breath caught in my throat. I answered, my hand clamped over my mouth to stifle the sound of my own panic. Hello? I managed. There was a pause, the sound of a bustling street in the background. Then, a voice. Is this Eleanor? The voice was hesitant, different. Yes. Who is this? I asked, playing my part. It's a friend of Sarah's. She asked me to call. She said to tell you that she arrived safely. Another pause. She said to tell you the weather is much better than she expected. My knees went weak with relief. It was her. And she was using the clumsy code we had never even discussed. An implicit understanding between sisters. The weather. A simple, meaningless phrase that meant everything. I am safe. I am free. It was worth it. Thank you. I breathed, tears streaming down my face. Thank you for letting me know. Can you tell her I'm thinking of her? I will, the voice promised. And then the line went dead. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know if she had enough money, or if she had found a place to stay, or if she was lonely. But I knew she was alive, and the man who had hurt her did not know where she was. He could not hurt her again. And for the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe. My life is different now. The process of replacing my stolen documents was a bureaucratic nightmare, just as I had predicted. The stain is still on the armchair. I haven't cleaned it. Some days I look at it and feel a surge of debilitating fear. I see Sarah's bloodshot eyes. I hear her ragged whisper. He said I deserved it. But on other days I look at it and I feel a fierce, defiant pride. That stain is a scar, a memory of a night when love became an action. A night when I chose my sister over the rules. I don't know what the future holds. Perhaps one day, years from now, I'll get a postcard from a city I've never seen, signed with a name I don't recognize, telling me about the weather. Or perhaps I won't. But I know that in the face of ugliness, we did not shatter. One of us ran, and one of us stayed, and we both, in our own ways, survived. We chose a different ending to the story he was trying to write for us. Sometimes the most profound act of love is not to hold on, but to let go with a command. Run. It is in the desperate, selfless, and even reckless choices we make for one another that our true humanity is forged, proving that the bonds we share are stronger than any darkness that tries to break them. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a message of hope.